Okay, good morning and welcome to our panel discussion here today, preparing for our new normal. We understand that as business owners, you're currently positioning your business for the future post-lockdown, and there are many unknowns. There are so many questions around the preparation of not only operating in level 3, but also into the future. So today, the Chamber's brought together a panel of experts to assist in preparing yourself, your team, and your business appropriately in the new normal. So firstly, let me introduce our panel. In the strategic corner, we have John Broadley. John is a business advisor with Strategy Plus, offering strategic business assistance, business planning, mentoring and coaching, along with a range of other services that aid owners to better lead their businesses. He's led businesses and worked with leaders in many sectors through significant change. Talking to Human Resources, we welcome Lesley-Anne Thomas. Lesley-Anne is the principal consultant and founder of People in Mind, a Cambridge-based HR consultancy business. She takes a practical approach to working with clients, looking for innovative solutions and strategies that will position a business well for the future. Lesley-Anne brings over 20 years experience of HR experience to this webinar and will share some advice for here and now. From the financial sector, we welcome Graham Scott. Graham is a chartered accountant and director of local firm GW Scott and Associates. He specialises in business development, which he defines as making more profit from less time. He's guided clients through several recessions in the past and looks forward to sharing that knowledge with our members today. And talking to marketing, we have Christy Wright, who runs Thomas Wright Design, a digital agency that helps keep Kiwi businesses, big and small, succeed in the vast and fast-moving world of digital media. Thank you for all joining us here today. I'm going to hand over to John shortly to lead the conversation, but I just wanted to flag that there is a Q&A icon down the bottom of the screen. At any point through those conversations, just pop your questions in, and when we get to the Q&A section, we'll ask them on your behalf. So for now, let's hand over to John. Welcome.
Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here. I thought I'd start with a quote. I was going to start with the old Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times," but thought it more appropriate really to quote Charles Darwin, who purportedly said that it's not the strongest species or the most intelligent that survives, the one most adaptable to change. It's the old Tyrannosaurus Rex versus the Tuatara. I know that a lot of you are wondering what's going to happen to you in these interesting times. And really, I suppose as a panel, we're interested in where you are at the moment. And we've classified the 4 groupings that you could be in. Thriving, you can see the business couldn't be better. You know, you're manufacturing PPE or running a supermarket. Steady, the business is managing okay. Surviving, head just above water, or drowning, the business is struggling. Why we've classified it that way is because at the end of this webinar, we've got a handout we can send out to you, and it will have by function some ideas for each of these 4 groupings, so that you can, depending on where you position yourself, it will give you some ideas about things you need to think about. From a business strategy perspective, there are probably some key questions that I want you to think about as a business owner, and really and to discuss these questions with your trusted business advisors, your partners, and your team as appropriate. The first one is clearly understanding the why you are in business. Things have obviously changed since when you started your business, and you really need to have a serious conversation with yourself about, do you want to keep going? Because if your heart's not in it, your team, staff, your customers and suppliers will realize very, very quickly. So it's really important that you decide, is the why still there? Is your vision for your business still functioning properly, and you've still got a longer term outlook? That is important. Obviously, we hope that you all keep operating, but it's clearly your decision. The second one is, what am I currently selling? what are the products and or services and the beneficial outcomes that I'm looking for in being in the market. That's really important because things are changing very, very quickly, and that's going to continue more so. So you need to know really what it is that you are selling. The third question is, who are and who will be my customers, my current customers, my future customers, because you need to address their needs. You need to be making sure that the products and or services that you deliver now and into the future will meet their needs. Because they're not going to be more discerning, there's going to be less money around, and they want to buy a product and or service, and you need to understand why they are buying that product and or service so you can meet their requirement. And critically, why should they buy it from you? What is your competitive edge? How do you differentiate yourself from your competitors? How is it you can deliver your product and service in a very effective and efficient manner? That is really critical. And then finally, the point I want to make in my introductory comments are really, what strategic options do you have, the plan, and which one will best enable you to succeed or exit depending on what you do. And I've incorporated in those notes things called the Boyd cycle or decision cycle. And that is your ability. You have a major strength as small to medium businesses that you can respond very, very quickly to change. And you can observe what's going on. You can orientate your business very quickly, by technology, decide what you're going to do and then act very quickly. Because if you can do that quicker than your competitors or the bigger players in the market, you might be able to seize the initiative. And it also goes that if you decide that you've done a good time in your business and you want to exit, then that gives you opportunities to think about what you're going to do to exit your business if you decide quickly. And it is important. That's me. I'll basically escape out of here and hand over to Christy.
Awesome. I'll just share my screen. Oh. Sorry, minor technical difficulties.
Do we want to pass through to maybe one of the other panelists, John, maybe to Lesley-Anne while Christy's? Yep,
that'll give you a chance. Lesley-Anne, can you pick up the baton? You're muted too, Lesley-Anne.
Still getting used to running seminars on Zoom. So look, I'm just going to talk briefly about rethinking your HR, and probably follows on nicely from John's comments around being able to adapt. And so I've tried to focus more, not so much on the negative of redundancies, but having a look at how you work with your whole business, your whole team. And just want you to keep in mind that mantra that I have down the bottom of involve, consult and document. And that's where we generally see people going wrong. So if you can involve, consult and document, then you're probably going to do a really good job of rethinking how your structure looks in your business. Some things for you to think about when you're changing direction. Sorry, my having a moment. Here we go. Your planning. If you're going to be changing direction, you're going to need to do some planning, some financials, and thinking around your structures are those sort of two key areas that you might be planning in. When you go out to make some changes with your team, and I understand a lot of businesses are going to be looking at how they change the structure of their team. So the more effort you put into your planning, the more robust your process will be. When you've worked out what you think you might want to do with your business and your team, then you're going to put a proposal out to the team. We're going to look at the background, the process, the timeline, and the communications. And all of those aspects go into your proposal that you put out to your team. Once you've done that, you've got to give your team an opportunity to give feedback. And then when you've got that feedback in, it's a genuine consideration of the feedback. And from that feedback, what can you incorporate? And to give you an example, we've got a client at the moment who's making, probably downsizing by the equivalent of 2 people. They've actually gone out with a slightly different structure, not to make people redundant, but to change hours. And one of the team members has come back with a proposal to step out for 3 months and pick up some other work. So can the client actually incorporate that into their thinking for the next 3 months? And that's really what good feedback and genuine consideration is all about. Once you've done that, you've got some decision making to do, and it might be that you need to go back to consultation because your team have come up with some ideas that you hadn't thought about, or something to make you rethink your strategy. And then ultimately you're going to make a final decision and communicate it, and you need to do some outcome documentation and most likely some individual outcome letters. I mentioned before not to just think about redundancies, share the load. Can you change the hours for several of the staff or all of the staff, particularly in the short to medium term? Can you shorten your working week? It might be that my staff work 4 days instead of 5 days, and maybe they split. So there might be a period of time in the week where everybody's there. Some work Monday to Thursday, some work Tuesday to Friday, or whatever your working week looks like. Can you outsource for a temporary period? And that's probably particularly relevant in some, I guess, our stronger areas around construction, aspects like that. In the health sector, can you actually outsource and help other businesses and also give yourself a little bit of relief, again, for the short term? And can you also deal with some of the reductions you need to make by natural attrition? Documentation, once you've worked through some change with staff, you need to consider whether terms need updating. Do your job descriptions need updating? Because perhaps you've actually moved key responsibilities and functions around. And maybe what policies need updating. For example, if you are going to work with a mix of home-based work and office-based work, or the actual work site, there might be some issues around privacy, transfer of data, all of those sorts of things. So what policies might need updating? And I probably can't emphasise enough here, keep them simple, don't keep them complicated, just focus on simple. Christy, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. All sorted.
We'll stop sharing. Here we are.
Awesome. Just waiting on Aroha, who's going to help a little bit. So my name is Christy Wright. I'm from Thomas Wright Design, and I'm here to talk to you about why you shouldn't stop marketing at the moment. So obviously many people have been stressed over the last 4 weeks, but my advice is to utilize things that you already have to make sure that you're still reaching your clients and still getting that money coming in. So first up is to focus on your target market. It's really important to know your market. Not everybody is going to buy your products or services, so it's really about looking at smart ad spend at the moment. Your target market may have changed over the last 4 weeks, so it's important to sit down and have a brainstorm. Think about your location, so this may have expanded or decreased according to what services you're now offering. Think about age, gender, interests, and even what type of job they have. So looking at your target market is going to allow you to make smart advertising decisions and content decisions as you go. So there are 3 areas to focus on with your marketing as we're moving forward into level 3 and down the stages. The first is your website. So it's really important to make sure that your website is up to date. If you have service changes, new hours, new health and safety policies, this is a great place to put this key information. If you can sell online, do it. Make sure that your website is constantly evolving. So this means that you don't have to have all of your products online straight away. Pick your key products or your most popular and get them online through an e-commerce platform. This is going to mean that you can add to this as you go, but it will give you the opportunity to start making money as we can send things out again. There are a number of great DIY platforms for this, and of course many designers out there who are happy to help. Next up, focus on your social media. So focusing on your social media means speaking to new and old clients. Remember that people don't want to be sold to constantly and that they want to engage with meaningful content. This means focusing on 3 key post types. The first is your products or services. So this is your advertising, showcasing what it is that you're trying to sell. The second key post type is knowledge. So this is how you can share tips and tricks and things that you know within your industry. An example of this is I've seen many cafes sharing how best to make a coffee at home, or salons sharing little tutorials about lockdown hair and ways that you can look after your skin. Sharing this knowledge keeps your brand and your business in front of your clients, and it's meaningful. They'll come back to you in the long run. The third type of post is looking at human interest posts. So this is the warm, fuzzy content that people want to see at the moment. Everyone is saturated with COVID-19 messaging. It's important to remember that people go to social media for fun, for social aspects. They want to connect with their network. This means that you can showcase your brand, your personality, and your values by showing off the team, show off your lockdown projects, showcase what you're up to, and give that warm, fuzzy content. Top tip is that people love dogs and babies. So if you've got pets, get them in there. Then lastly, you'll need to focus on running targeted marketing campaigns to drive traffic through to that website. So these targeted marketing campaigns, you can change your budget according to what you have available at that moment. It'll be a way to just push that traffic and make sure that people are still seeing your brand. The third thing to focus on with your marketing is email. Utilize your current database and take advantage of the clients that you already have to spread the word about what you do. This doesn't mean that these people will necessarily want to buy. Obviously, some people are going through tough times. However, use this database to directly email them, show them that you are there if they need you, ask them to support you in different ways through sharing your social media. And if you have a sale running or if you're running different promotions, this is a great place to start. Encourage people to shop local, thank them for their support, and again, make sure you're focusing on meaningful content. Lastly, it's important that whatever you're doing with your analytics, you're checking with your marketing, that you're checking your analytics regularly. Analyzing your traffic to your website and to your social media allows you to make informed decisions on your marketing. This will mean that you can track what's happening, and then you can make decisions moving forward about what you're going to be doing with your business. So that's me. So I will pass you off to the next speaker.
Right. Is that my cue just to start? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Talking about the financial side of things, John's talked about the strategic things you need to be thinking about, whether you've still got the passion for your business, whether you even want to stay in business. Leslie Ann's talked about perhaps redundancies, keeping people on, and Christy's talked about marketing. All these decisions hinge on the numbers, and if you haven't got numbers, you're just guessing. So the theme of my talk is really making sure that you've got some sort of cash flow spreadsheets so you can make informed decisions. Now, we know they're not going to be incredibly accurate. Nobody quite knows when we're going to come out of this dip, but you can put something down on a spreadsheet. You can have a bit of a play and just see what the numbers look like. I've got a very simple spreadsheet and a 10-minute tutorial that I've prepared for our clients. I'm going to send that to Kelly and Araha. So if anyone would like it, they're more than welcome to make contact with them and get it. So the big thing for me is you need to figure out how much money you're bleeding. And if you're bleeding really badly, you want to do your spreadsheet on a weekly basis, perhaps even daily, and just see how far you can go. You need to keep in touch with your bank. And some of us, I think, have had some pretty bad experiences with the bank over the last 12 months. Since this virus came along, they've changed their attitude a lot. The Reserve Bank has backed down on the capitalisation requirements, and the government is underwriting 80% of the new lending that the banks are doing. So they're a different beast to deal with. Talk to your banks. When you've got your cash flow, you can also look at where expenses can be trimmed, and you just need to be careful it's not knee-jerk reaction, trim, because it will come right one day. And the businesses that hit the ground running, that turn the corner before everyone else, are going to do extremely well. Couple of final thoughts is, whether you're in the thriving, steady, surviving or drowning category, some of your customers or potential customers will be thriving and doing really well. There's a story of an American bank robber who finally got caught, and someone asked him, "Why do you rob banks?" And his simple answer was, "Because that's where the money is." So whereabouts in the market is the money? There are still teachers getting paid, policemen getting paid, the supermarket owners are doing all right. If I was in the building industry, for example, I'd be going back through my old invoice book and looking for the people who still have money. And I'll just see if I can, it's likely that it's going to take a while for us to come out of this, but it's not all doom and gloom. And I just wanted to share that with you all and just remind ourselves that there are worse places in the world that we could possibly be. Okay, I will, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that, and I will hand back for some questions.
Fantastic. So we've had a couple of questions. Thanks, guys. One for you first up, Christy. Someone's asked, is there an optimum number of social posts per week at this time?
So my advice would be to not saturate people with too much. Everyone is on their phones at the moment. They are avoiding family and procrastinating from work, so everyone's online. But I would recommend potentially looking at about 3 posts per week. So remember to not overload people with too much advertising, and to look at those analytics. If you go into your insights in your Facebook tab, for example, you can see when people are online. You can see when people are most likely to be seeing your posts. So use these analytics to inform those decisions of when you're posting as well.
Thank you. I've got one for you, Lesley-Ann. And someone has asked, what happens with the subsidy if a staff member resigns within the 12-week period? Does this have to be declared?
You have to contact the wage subsidy phone line, which I'll put the number into the chat screen for everybody to see, but it's 0800 40 80 40. You have to advise MSD around that, but you do not have to return the money. So if they've voluntarily resigned, you can use the money to support your overall wage payments. It might include some final pay owing to that employee, and then towards the rest of your wage bill. So I will pop that telephone number in so that people know where to go to get that information.
Thank you. So I've got one perhaps for you, Graham. What is the newly announced depreciation rate on commercial properties?
It's now 2%. It doesn't kick in. I think it might be next financial year. Just remember that the depreciation that's claimed, you get a short-term benefit over the years, but if you sell the building for more than its book value, that money will have to be, the tax that you've saved will have to be repaid. So I'm a little bit cynical about how generous the government is being with this one.
Thank you. Another one, Lesley-Ann, for you. How do you treat an employee who won't accept less pay when we reopen?
That requires a fair bit of consultation. Provided you've worked through that consultation in good faith and you had that employee given that employee an opportunity to present their commentary, their feedback, you can ultimately make some decisions that might not fit with the employee's thinking, but provided you have worked through consultation, good feedback opportunity, explaining to them why, and I think the why is really important. There's a lovely advert on TV at the moment with a lovely Māori lady who's explaining consultation that she had with her son around a school camp. She always talks about giving the why, and that's really important, is giving that big picture for the employee to understand why that's necessary. It might be that you agree with it for, agree to a short period and you review it in a short period of time. But ultimately, if the business can't afford to pay full wages, you can make some changes, but you need to just tread carefully.
Thank you. One for you, John. We're hearing a lot about consumer confidence. Can you explain what that means and whether I can make, as a business, a contribution to that?
We live in interesting times, and so all the economists and forecasters are trying to work out how long we're going to be in this situation, how long for us to come out. So it is a bit of science attached to it, but also a lot of speculation. So consumer confidence, what we don't know is when it's going to resurrect ourselves to it has been over the past few years. But what we do know is, of course, that our economy is going to be affected by tourism, or the lack of, certainly international tourism, international students. And therefore, New Zealand is going to have to adapt to a more local environment. Now, if you, as a business, can target what the New Zealand customer wants, and you do it quicker than your competitors, then that will help the consumer in your market to get more confidence. There's no doubt that a happy customer spends money, and if we come out of this COVID-19 quicker than most, then people will be happier. But it's going to take a wee while for them to start spending, because cash is king. They're holding on to their money. A number of them have taken sort of 20% or plus cuts to their wages or salaries, and therefore people will be holding on to cash.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think there's a lot of uncertainties in our consumer base as well, and that will, I think, evolve and adapt as our levels change, and as they adjust to the new normal as well.
Yeah.
I do have a question which has got some names of some businesses, so I'm going to address them outside of this particular forum, but please acknowledge that we have received that. I've got another one here saying, and it's around commercial leases, which has been a really big part of our conversations over the last 3 weeks, to be fair. So the question says, it's really difficult paying business rent at the moment with no money coming in. How are people finding the cooperation from their landlord? I might just open with that and then perhaps throw across to you, Graham. I think we've been very involved in the property owners group, who have really considered the market, the situation, and particularly for our hospitality and retailers, which is mainly where our conversations have been. Most have been really empathetic and really supportive. There are some very difficult conversations going on, and I think it has to be recognised there are two parts to that equation. There is, without question, the tenant, who, if you're in a cafe or a retail environment, this is really hard yards. But there is also an understanding of the landlord and their financial predicament as well. And there's lots of different circumstances out there. I think, all the advice we've been given is just to keep those conversations alive. I mean, the question has to be asked, if the current business fell over, who's going to be standing in line to replace that? And what we don't want is a lot of empty shops in our township. It's not good for business confidence. It's not good for anybody. So I think just keep those conversations real, with an understanding and empathy to both sides of the equation. And from my side, where you are absolutely at loggerheads, then do seek some legal advice. I mean, I think, conversations with banks and solicitors and legal will help guide both parties to ideally find a positive outcome for the longer term. Graham, I'll hand over to you to continue that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good summary. We've got quite a few commercial landlords on our books, and I've been talking to a few of them. For me, I think it's what they were worried about is if they said we would cut the rent or we would cut it back significantly, is that there was no end point. They didn't know whether that was for the rest of the year, for 6 months, forever, or what. So the advice I've been giving to them is look at it on a month-by-month basis. Of the 3 that I can think of, 2 of them have said 100% no rent, but if the tenant can cover the outgoings, so that's the insurance and the rates, and the 3rd person gave them a 75% reduction, but we must be just about due to revisit that. The thing is, for the landlords, it's not like there's a queue of people sitting there to take over. So you've kind of got them over a barrel. But I think that for a lot of people who are new into commercial property ownership, they are starting to get a really good lesson on risk and return. There's a reason that commercial property returns are higher than, say, residential property, and it's because you have a lot higher tenant risk. If the tenant goes broke, then your building loses value unless you can get someone in straight away. So I think it's time for landlords to show a bit of kindness.
Thank you. I've got a couple more for you, Christy. I'm working on an e-commerce site, but who's going to distribute all the goods? What are my options?
So in terms of e-commerce, it does depend on what platform you're using. There are many things out there, such as Go Sweet Spot. There's different courier integrations with these. As we're moving through the different levels, it means that your staff potentially will need to be packaging goods and sending these out with couriers. If you are local and are able to, I do know some clients who are dropping things off with contactless delivery themselves and doing the tap tap step back protocol. So it really depends on what will work with your business. What I would recommend is talking to your team about how they can help with this as well, because the last thing you want is to get completely overwhelmed with orders and not be able to fulfill them. So talk to your web developer or your designer, talk with your team about how they can help, and utilize your own feet and vehicles if you can.
Thank you. So there's been a number of HR questions, Lesley-Anne, and they're all, I guess, about where they've opened the conversation and haven't been able to reach an agreement. So, for example, changing those hours. As you say, you've kind of gone through that in the process, but can I suggest that if people do have quite specific questions, they direct them perhaps post forum, because I guess every circumstance is going to be slightly different. One of the questions, though, that is useful asking is that given my business won't be at full capacity during level 3, can I ask my staff to take annual leave?
Ultimately, yes. You need to, my advice is that you need to have a conversation with them about putting some leave plans in place to help with that work leave ratio. Once you've done that in good faith, then you can give 14 days notice directing an employee to take leave. So the minimum requirement from an employer to an employee is 14 days notice, but that's after you've consulted with them in good faith. When I say consulting, it doesn't need to be long and complicated. Sit down again and tell them that why story, and most of the times you can deal with that through a conversation and then back it up through an email.
Thank you. And so where I have changed my hours of operation so I can operate safely, if a staff member says they can't work those hours or days, where do we go from there?
Again, it's about having that conversation. What other alternatives can they put on the table that you can consider? Ultimately, if there's no way around it, when you've done your good faith processes, then you can direct them to take that, and they're going to have to make some decisions about whether they can live with that or not. But the more that you can engage with them and try and come to a workable solution. It might not be your perfect solution, it might not be their perfect solution, but it's one you can both live with. That's going to be a lot healthier for everybody and the business.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of the questions that are there, and I think they've been quite honest questions, and the panel have provided some good base of direction. Have you guys as panelists got anything else you'd like to add before we conclude the forum?
What I was going to suggest is there's some do's and don'ts, for the business owners. I mean, do answer those 6 questions that I mentioned earlier, and you'll get a copy of those. Do have a vision and a plan, and you've heard from all of us. You need to communicate well with your team, with your customers, your suppliers, so they understand your circumstances, so it helps you make the best decision. Do involve your team in any of the discussions and thinking that you are planning as much as you can, because quite often a lot of the very, very good ideas come from those that are working at the coalface on a daily basis and conversations they're having. And so there's a lot of value from having conversations with them. Do stick to your knitting in these sort of times, because you've got into business because you're competent in a certain area, building a product, manufacturing, or providing a service. And it's a good time to get back to your knitting and remind yourself, what was your competitive edge, what is it, and where can you keep pushing that to have a point of difference in the market. And really focus on the things you can change. I mean, there's a lot that you can't, and we just have to accept and adapt, and be positive, because it is, there are difficult times for everybody, but communicating well will help you, and leading your business properly and sensibly. And don't get distracted by a lot of the snake oil salespeople like me that are out and about. You need to talk to your trusted business advisors and making sure that you are getting the best advice to help you make the best decision. Don't feel you're alone. We're all here to help, and you can make it easier if you've got something to bounce ideas off. And don't worry about the things you can't change.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody. I think just a reminder, we'll be doing posting the webinar online with the various documentations that each of the panelists have contributed. We know there's a lot of people out there who are working really, really hard to reopen at level 3 in a different capacity. It's a new road, and as much as there is quite a bit of doom and gloom or saturation of information, there's some really cool things happening out there. So dig deep. I guess small to medium operators have always operated in a really tough climate, and probably your own little bubble before that became a word that we all rolled off the top of our tongue. So remember that you're not alone. Reach out to the Chamber or your colleagues in the business community. I do want to reiterate that Te Waka, our economic development agency, have got a superb business advisory line there. I should have written it down, but if I go to type around and find it now, I may just shut you all down. So email me, I'm ceo@cambridgechamber.co.nz, or go into the Te Waka Facebook or website. They are offering good support on cash flow and financial planning. They've got some great resources that are funded. So please avail those if you need. But remember, you're not alone. We are in it together, and we're here if you need. So keep in touch, and I hope you found this be of value. And again, thank you, Araha, for coordinating the panel to get to the stage today, and for all of our panelists for your prep and expertise today. We're grateful. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day. Happy Friday. Happy Anzac weekend.
And to you too, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.